Hello my fellow cadets, I'm here to show you how to properly polish your shoes. I'm going to go over some of the things you're going to need. First, you're going to need some shoe polish. I suggest getting this little kit of yours. It's of the Kiwi brand, which is the one you need. It has 2 containers of Kiwi shoe polish. Toothbrushes, and 1 cloth. Personally, I suggest you don't use the cloth. You instead take one of these like normal shirts that you can get in bundles, the same as the ones you wear underneath your uniform, and then you cut them up to make a bunch of cloths for polishing your shoe. First, let's talk about cleaning and removing old shoe polish. When I work on my shoes, I have a towel underneath them to keep my work area clean as much as possible. First, you should remove the shoelaces. If you think you'll struggle to remember which way how they are done, then I suggest you take a picture of them before then. So that way you can put them back to normal afterwards. Take one of the horsehair shoe brushes to scrape away old shoe polish and dirt. You don't want to keep a bunch of old layers of shoe polish stacking on top of each other, as it will eventually just mess up the shoe and make it harder for you to properly polish it with several layers of old shoe polish stacked on top of itself. The shoe brush won't do much damage to the shoes, as it is really just a brush. So you don't really need to be too careful when it comes to removing all the old shoe polish and dirt that has gotten onto it. And as for when it comes to cleaning the sides right here and the bottom, I suggest you actually use a spare toothbrush. This is one I've been using for a while for doing this. I take the top of the shoe polish container and fill it with water. Wet the brush a little, and you'll be able to clean in between the shoes. This helps remove plenty of dirt and dust that has gotten all over your shoe. Just be careful not to scratch up the shoe itself. I personally use this instead of the horseshoe brush, just because I think it's stronger at removing dirt. You won't really be tested. They won't really be checking the bottom of your shoes to see if there's dirt and stuff. Mostly because, well, there's gonna be stuff on the bottom of your shoes since you're gonna be walking in them. But still, it's good to keep them clean, especially as stuff like gum gets stuck to them. Once you've cleaned your shoe and removed old shoe polish, I suggest you dump the water in this and refill it with new water. Make sure you have it clean. You do not really need much water, as you don't really want to be covering your whole shoe with water, as it can end up messing up your shoe polish. When it comes to using the cloths, I suggest you actually wrap it, like twist it around to create a strong grip with 2 of your fingers. If the cloths you make are as long as mine, then you can just twist it around and twist it around to keep the longer bits from falling onto the shoe and messing up your neck polish. And you just tap your fingers into the water to help absorb sun. When you're polishing your shoe, I suggest you do it underneath as much light as possible, so that way you can view all of the marks from better. If there's a mark that you missed, or if you accidentally put a fingerprint on it, if there's enough light, you'll be able to see it. I suggest you put your hand in your shoe for this process, as it'll increase your grip and just help shape it enough for you to have enough of a solid surface for you to polish. When it comes to parts that have been bent a bit, I'm not sure what the word is, from when you're bending your shoe, ridges, whatever they're called, you don't really need to be polishing them so much to the point where they look completely covered by shoe polish and you can't even see them, because as soon as those parts bend again, it's going to create a bunch of loose shoe polish that's just going to fall on top of your shoe. So you don't need to be polishing them to the point where they're no longer visible. Just polish them enough so that way they look good. Rub your finger. I need to water this a bit more. Rub your fingers onto the shoe polish. You don't need a whole lot. If you put too much, it's just gonna be, it's gonna be way too much for you to work with, and it's gonna lead to you having to do more work than necessary. Do tiny circles going all around. Slowly start from the bottom and slowly make your way up. I suggest you separate these into sections when you're polishing your shoe. Like this front section right here, this side right here, and then the side right here. Do these 2 bits, and then the bit right here. You'll be constantly making tiny circles all around it, starting from the bottom and making your way up. This process takes time, so you can either practice with your whatever information in your head or out loud, or you can just put on something to listen to or watch as you do this. Depending on how well you want your shoes done, each shoe can take from half an hour to a full hour. Though as you get more and more practice with this, you'll notice that it takes less time, especially since the shoe would be like getting into better shape after a while. I had just polished my shoe before this, so my shoe is already like in decent condition, so that way it's not taking too long to repolish. Since this process takes so much more time, I suggest you do this over the weekend, as that's when you'll have the most time available to yourself. Look at how shiny the shoe is now. You can see your reflection in it. The more time you put into it, the shinier it'll come off, and then you'll be able to actually get good, decent scores on your inspections. I'm going to move on to the other side now. This side can be a bit more tough, so I suggest you hold it at an angle as you do it. Get some more water. Grab some more polish. You don't need to completely cover your fingers in it, or else you're just gonna create even more. It's just gonna be coating in way too much to the point where it's just gonna be scuffing it up. Remember, start from the bottom, move your way up. When it comes to the hard sides right here, you don't really need to polish those. Those are not necessary. Remember, do tiny circles, starting from the bottom, making your way up. I got this side done pretty decently. Like I said, since I already had these polished a bit before I'd done this, it already doesn't take as long. I only end up removing some of the previous shoe polish. Make tiny circles, start from the bottom, make your way up. You want to spread the shoe polish all around. Make sure you get this up like the back end right here. Sometimes you end up forgetting that, but make sure you do it. Some will suggest you use cotton balls instead. I suggest you don't, as you'll get bits of cotton over your shoe, and it's going to be more of a pain to remove all of those. If you use a shirt, you won't have to deal with a bunch of threads. You don't really need to worry too much when it comes to a bunch of miscellaneous water droplets, because since you're just working with a wet cloth, there's going to be water on this anyway. So you don't really need to worry too much about it, as they'll end up drying anyway and won't take that long to dry. But as long as they're just tiny little specks of water. These bits right here can be a bit hard to work with just because they're flappy. So I suggest you have your hand behind them in order to create a solid surface. Since since it's such a small surface, you do not need much shoe polish. Just rub on a tiny bit, and that will be enough. Tiny circles will likely be will either take up half of it or the entire bit of this. The more you do this, the less time it would take over time. My light has died, so just gonna be working with my room light instead. Either way, you can still see how polished it is. You can see the reflection. Switching to the other side now. Bit more water, only a tab of shoe polish. My chair is hitting the side. Remember, tiny circles and only a little bit of shoe polish for this section. You do not need much. You'll notice with how smooth your shoe is with all the shoe polish. Dirt will not be easily stuck to your shoe. It'll actually just be looking like it'll be pretty easy to wipe off if you're using just a wet cloth. So I suggest when you're wearing these on uniform inspections, on uniform days, you bring a cloth with you, like one of these. And if there's dirt on it, just use a little bit of it, like water, to help wipe it off. Though be careful not to scratch up your shoe with the dirt. Which reminds me, if you do not have a shoe brush, you can just use one of these cloths, wet it, and wipe off the dirt yourself. That's what I used for a year before I got one of these. So it works. Now we'll be moving on to this. Like the other bits, have your hand directed beneath it to help give yourself some more surface to work with. Well, solid surface. And like the other bit, you do not need much shoe polish due to how small it is. Start from one side and move all the way to the other. Tiny circles moving from the bottom, making your way up. And that's that final bit polished. You will notice how much shinier your shoe will look. Though, to be safe, I suggest you do that a second time, and you'll be able to have your shoe come off much shinier and fix up any spots you missed beforehand. I found my kit of items at a Walmart in that little section that has its own purchasing bit. What's it called? I found one right next to where you buy like a bunch of like other cleaning stuff. The section that has its own checkout area. If you can't afford this, then you might also find just some just normal Kiwi shoe polish on by itself. And sometimes you'll notice that little threads will come off as you wear a shoe more often. I use these scissors. They're used for cutting threads for sewing and stitching. And they're small enough to help cut off the tiny loose threads that sometimes will show. And now you'll have a perfectly polished shoe if you do this a second time, which is where the whole thing of it taking half an hour to a whole hour comes from. But like I said, the more often you do this, the less time it will take. Goodbye. Wait, hold on. I'll show you how to put your shoelaces back on. You'll want to keep the shoelaces at an equal length. And if you don't, it'll if these are very much uneven, then it will show. Going from the front, the left side goes on the bottom, and then the right will go over. Once you've reached your second or third hole on this, tighten it, and then be careful and gently finish off the last 2 or 3 holes. There you'll have your shoe all done and ready for a uniform day, and goodbye.